Hello and welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live. My name is Daniel Cott and I'm delighted to be joined this afternoon by Record Sports Andy Newport and live from the Smisa Stadium, Michael Gannon. Guys, how are you both?
Freezing. It's meant to be August. I'm not even joking, boys. It is absolutely Baltic here. I mean, freezing. Sitting here wrapped up with my layers on and all that stuff. I should have brought my woolly hat. It's Baltic here.
I can sympathise, Michael. I'm not far from you where you're sitting right now, and my back garden's an absolute swamp as I look out the back window right now, so I can sympathise with you.
Right, we'll get the kettle on, Andy. I'll be around 5 minutes after we finish here.
You're obviously there, Mick, fresh from Celtic's comfortable win over St Mirren. I think, obviously, with it being the Hotline Live, plenty of comments coming in. This one from Tony Coughlin to start. Casper could have had a day off today and we still would have won. That pretty much sums it up, doesn't it?
It was very much like the rest of the games this season so far. I mean, Celtic really, again, top notch. All guns blazing at the start. Third game in a row, they scored within 5 minutes. Fourth game in a row, they've had the game 2 goals up about half time, and the game pretty much finished. Conditions were, I mean, I know I'm joking about how cold it is, but the conditions were really tough. Kind of swirling winds and lashing rain the whole match. But Celtic managed it really, really well. So they came out really quick, got the early goal. Callum McGregor scoring inside about 3 minutes. Another kind of very much like the goal at Easter Road a few weeks ago. Ball coming in from the right, from this time to James Forrest. Picked his path and he just unleashed one. It was a great strike. It's a perfect strike for the conditions. They just bounced right in front of the goal and it zipped out the back of the net. Really good goal. Celtic on top pretty much the whole first half, and they got a second. Rio Hatate, nice finish after a knockdown from Dizemeda. Not great defending by St Mirren, what we said. Made won the ball in the air, but throughout, when Arsenal Johnson scored in the second half, and the game was pretty much done and dusted. You can tell Celtic brought on Nicholas Kuhn and Kyogo from the bench. At that point, you could actually see St Mirren's shoulders slumping. That's about an hour in the game. You think, oh, more trouble coming here, and sure enough, those two gave a wee bit of impetus and they got the third goal and they put the kind of more realistic kind of shine on the result. But yeah, Celtic were pretty good. Obviously, a lot of talk today. Matt O'Reilly, Ofsky, finally the long kind of running saga of the summer. Done and dusted, and it's off to Brighton for a big check coming Celtic's way. But they seem to cope pretty well today without him. Paulo Bernardo came in. It was busy. I don't think it was spectacular, but it was pretty decent. I think alongside him, Rio Hatate was just off the chart, sensational. Involved in nothing. I think I said in my copy that I think St Mirren, I thought he'd been cloned. He kept popping up everywhere. Really, really good. Alongside him, Callum McGregor is continuing his form at the start of the season. So I'm sure it would delight Steve Clark, who's in the stands here today as well, watching once again. But yeah, Celtic, impressive. But I say the talk is O'Reilly going. A lot of talk about who's coming in, and after the game, that dominated the post-match press conference with Brendan Rodgers, which was quite illuminating, actually, quite interesting. His comments as well.
But Mick, you obviously, it's the first game in the kind of post-Matt O'Reilly era. We've had plenty of comments sent in. I'll throw a couple of these at you just now. I'll try and get through these. Chris Farrell, no point in getting emotionally attached to these players. This is what we do. It's a very successful business model. He's just a player we bought, developed and sold. Andreas saying it's time for Bernardo to become the £30 million player we all know he will. Thomas Gray, we move on. As always, Matt earned his big money move and gave everything to Celtic and the fans. It's a privilege to have watched them the past 2 seasons. And Dave Joyce says Engles and Bogusz would make fantastic additions to our already excellent squad. I mean, that is the talking point now, Mick, isn't it? That the money's in for O'Reilly. They've got a week to go. They kind of need to spend a big chunk of
it. They really have to. I mean, listen, Celtic are strong. I mean, to deal with Scottish football, they're strong enough, and on a day they'll be far too strong for everyone in Scotland. But they do need additions, especially for Europe and for the long campaign ahead. So there's an admittance. I mean, Brendan Rodgers after the game admitted they would have to spend the money, and there's been mistakes made this summer. To get into this stage of the window, having no real new outfield players in the books. I mean, I know they brought in Bernardo Nida, who were already, I think, cleared out their desks from last year. So I can't really count that. But to get to this position with 5 days to go is bewildering unacceptable, ridiculous, you name it. And I think there's an acceptance within the club that is the case, that this is just madness. I mean, it's self-inflicted stress they could done without. And now they're going to have to pay over the odds, because the last week of the window is not a time to be going shopping. You might get some loan deals and the occasional little kind of player who's getting discarded by somebody else. But if you want to buy quality, you're going to end up paying right through the nose this week. So having dithered all summer on transfers, are now going to pay more than they would have paid a month ago, and that's their own doing. But they'll need to bring in 3 or 4 proper players in the next week, or there's going to be hell to pay. I mean, the fans are really going to be angry, because 25 to 26 million up front for O'Reilly coming in to go on top of the pile that's already there. If that money's not getting spent, or a portion of it, there's going to be hell to pay, I said. I mean, and understandably so.
Kieran Conley, who's written in on Record Sports social media channels, and I should say, if you're watching at home, get involved in the comment section. Kieran Conley says the board has let the manager and the fans down massively. There's absolutely no excuse they can use as to why things have been left this late, and it all points to incompetence. And on top of that, Mick, as well, there's a video doing the rounds on social media today of Peter Lawwell leaving the stadium and getting stick off the fans. It does feel like it's a bigger week than it should be for Celtic, if you know what I mean. They're cruising on the pitch, but this is a massive, massive week for the club as a whole.
It is. I mean, that's what I was touching on. I mean, this was a summer when Celtic could really have put the foot down and really strengthened across the board. I mean, the money they've got in the bank, the money they knew was coming in for O'Reilly this point in time, they really had a chance to kind of elevate the club to a different level. And you look at the Champions League format, the new format, to get into the knockout stages, finishing between 9th and 24th out of 32, that shouldn't be unrealistic. But as it stands just now, Celtic, with the same squad as last season, weaker in fact, with Matt O'Reilly, who's one of their best performers in Europe last season, the prospect now is that they're going to be really, really struggle at that level. That's the reality. They're good for Scotland, but not for Europe. They need to elevate that squad. And they needed to elevate the squad in last January. They needed to do it last summer, when they lost Jota, and it wasn't done. So now in the third window when it's not been done. So it's malfunctioning. The recruitment side of things has not been working. And I think their acceptance behind the scenes that is the case. Certainly Brendan Rodgers today was admitted that it's self-inflicted, this situation. And the question is now, having managed to get 2 or 3 new signs in over the summer in 3 months, can they get 3, 4, 5 in the next 5 days? Who knows? It's going to be really tricky. But I say they'll need to. They will need to, and they will do. I think they will do. They might end up paying more than they probably should do for some guys. And it'll be interesting to see what actually lands. I think they'll probably get 2 or 3 permanent deals and a couple of loan deals, maybe. Wouldn't surprise me. I think so. It's going to be a busy week. But firm game Sunday as well. So none of these guys are going to be involved Sunday. You could argue they don't need them for that weekend. They should be able to get by without them. But Europe's 3-4 weeks away now as well. It just seems so needless to be in this situation when they could have really put the foot down in the summer and took the club to a kind of different level. But they've dithered and dallied, and now they're running about with the supermarket sweep in the last week, trying to grab what they can.
See, just on the game next week, Mick, because I know obviously it sounds like you're in the middle of a twister, so we'll let you get up the road in just a minute. But see, on the game next week, obviously Adam Idah started today. Who do you think will start up front next week, him or Kyogo?
I think Kyogo's got to start. I mean, he did today. I mean, he was dead keen to get involved. I think he was a bit too keen, to be honest with you. I think he was trying a bit too hard, and he snatched a few things. He was all right, but I think Kyogo, especially in the games against Rangers, is proven he's an absolute thorn in the side for Rangers in his time in Scotland. He's a big game player. He's scored a lot of goals against Rangers. I think he'd be the one to get the nod for that kind of game. But we never know. He is kind of struggling with his shoulder slightly, but he came on today. He was lively. I would expect to see him leading up front next week.
And sorry, Mike. Just to finish before we let you go, Dave Joyce mentioned a little earlier, Engles and Bogusz. They're the 2 names that seem to be floating about. I know you're close to the Celtic squad. I'm not putting you in the spot, but are they the 2 names that you think they'll go big for? Is there anyone else that maybe is on the periphery that Celtic could be eyeing?
Listen, I think there's plenty on the table. Those 2 are the interesting ones. They're going to need to pay decent money for them. the boy Bogusz in America is one that they like, but they weren't close to valuation. He's very highly regarded out there, so they'll need to pony up for that one. Likewise, Engles is this guy's meant to be he's the cusp of the Belgian squad, young, exciting player. If the premium is there to get him, they have to go and pay it. Likewise, like I said, I think they could have got maybe these guys early in the window for less, but you get the final week. This is what you get. You have to get them dig deeper, because especially players that aren't. I mean, you can get guys that are getting discarded by teams fairly easily this week, and you can get loan deals done late on because the guys don't want to be hanging about in the fringes. But if you want guys who are in demand, you need to pay the piper. So these two are particularly interesting. But there's plenty of others in the pipeline, I think. I say I wouldn't be surprised at a couple of loan deals as well, just to bolster it. But they'll need to go big. I think they will need to go big. I still think they might. I think they might pull out a few at the hat that might surprise some people. But they need to buck the trend from a whole summer of faffing about.
Well, one thing that's for sure, Mick, is that it won't be boring. I think that's definitely we can bet on that. Mick, I know you got post-match duties, and I know you need to get up the road and get out of that twister that you're currently situated in, so we'll let you go. But thank you. Thank you very much for joining us on the Hotline Live. And if you pop up Nandy's house for that cup of tea, we'll maybe see you before we end the show.
I'm just waiting to see him fly past the window when he gets swept away. I've seen a couple of minutes.
Yeah, a big pot of soup on for us, Andy. That'd be lovely. Big pot of broth on for me.
Thanks very much, Mick. Cheers.
Cheers, guys. See you later.
Michael Gannon there from the Samisa Stadium. I'll just finish on Celtic.
Smicer, I think it's pronounced, by the way.
Smicer. I know, I always struggle with that one. But before I move on from Celtic, Andy, I'll throw this one at you. John Watt, who's watching live on YouTube, has written in saying, "This window's been terrible. The recruitment process is amateur hour stuff. They have left themselves with no room for error getting the signings right." Personally, I don't know if I'd go as far as say amateur hour. I can't really argue with anything John says there, though. But having said that, they've still got an opportunity, Celtic, to come out of this window strong if they do go big in the next 5 days. I know it's a big if.
Yeah, I mean, Michael's right in terms of they're certainly leaving it late. I mean, which seems surprising given the amount of time and the amount of money that they're sitting on. I mean, I must admit, I really expected Celtic to push the boat out this summer. I thought they were going to, given the stick that they're both taking so many times down the years for not spending what the fans would see as the correct sort of sums. Why would they put themselves in this position again if things were to go wrong? You know, like it did, a couple of years ago in 2021. I mean, for me, it's a difficult one for them because you do look at the way that the team is performing right now, and there's no need for them to spend huge sums to win the league again. Celtic, even losing Mateusz, will, I dare say, have more than enough to go and win this league this year. I mean, Rangers are obviously in a rebuild situation. We're not quite sure how they're going to pan out, but for me, I think they're still another couple of windows away from being anywhere near ready to challenge a Celtic team. So, but just in terms of Europe, if Celtic would go out and suffer some of the results that they've had in Europe, not that they've, obviously some of the performances last year were encouraging, but the results, a couple of heavy defeats, I think about Atletico Madrid last year, Real Madrid the year before. Mm-hmm. You're thinking, why are the board leaving themselves open to this criticism that they're going to get? They've got the money sitting there, just go out and spend it. And it's just, I don't think anyone can get their heads around why you're sitting here with 5-6 days to go left in the window and they've not spent the money when they've got it. They've got huge sums sitting there to be spent. So only, Michael Nicholson, only Peter Law will be able to sort of explain these things. But for me, it's something that I think they should have went and paid the money, and got 3-4 big statement signings in. And then at that point, if anything goes wrong, the board can turn around and go to the fans, listen, we did our part. Now, as you see today, they're having to go into games or they're getting stick off the supporters. I think the suggestion is that the directors have tried to placate the fans and say, listen, the money will be spent, but until it's spent, the fans aren't going to be happy. So I'm just not sure why the board have allowed themselves to be put in this position when they're getting more grief. You know, they've had down the years plenty of stick thrown their way. You know, justified or not, I just don't know why they'd want to put themselves in that position where they're taking it again.
Dom, who's watching on live on YouTube, says we need to spend to compete in Europe. Given the board the benefit of the doubt, I suspect that quality signings will arrive this week. I know, Andy, you were at the Rangers game yesterday. You spent a lot of pre-season with Rangers, so I know that's kind of where you've been recently. But what is your gut feeling? Do you think Celtic will go out and make a couple of statement signings this week?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of talk. We're talking about Bogusz there. We're talking about a few other guys that are going to be potentially coming in. But Mike, as you were saying a couple of months ago, is absolutely right. Signing now, when you could have signed these guys 3, 4, 5 weeks ago, just makes no sense.
It seems mad, I know.
And more so just because of, you know, if the guys, who knows what sort of condition they're coming in, who knows what sort of level of fitness they're at, if they've done a full pre-season or not, you know. And then you've got, as Mike says, you've got, what, 3 weeks, 4 weeks to go until the start of the Champions League. And, you know, you've got to get these guys up to speed fitness-wise. You've got to get them, you know, settled into Glasgow. You've got to get them settled into the changing room. They've got to get to know Brendan Rodgers' system and how he wants to play. You know, why leave that to the last week of the window when it then becomes a rush, when you could do it, as I say, a month ago, and at least give them time to bed in and get to know their surroundings and how Brendan Rodgers wants to set the team up. Listen, obviously, I think there's been some comments from Rodgers today where he said, listen, this is an issue they've got to address. So at least they're clearly aware that there is an issue and that they're holding hands up to that. But until it's fixed, then the Celtic support are well within the right to point fingers, because, you know, this is something that has happened time and time again down the years, and you're just amazed that they haven't sort of learnt the lessons of it. It's really quite surprising.
Moving on from Celtic, Andy, to across the city. It was a massive win for Rangers yesterday, 6-0 against Ross County. You were at the game. Does it look like maybe Rangers are starting to put together some sort of form ahead of next week's game? Yeah,
certainly the best performance of the season. Certainly the biggest win under Philippe Clement, the biggest win since beating, was it Hamilton 8-0 back the year they won the league. So, you know, it'll do wonders for confidence. You know, the criticism I think that Philippe Clement has pointed at his team this year is that they probably haven't been clinical enough. There've been, some dominant performances, but they just haven't had the goals to sort of underline that yet. So they got the goals, but I think there's still an awful lot of work to be done with this Rangers team before they could, you know, obviously a huge game next week, before they could be confident in going to Parkhead with no away support and be confident about getting a result. And there's just so many questions to be asked about even just who's going to be available. I mean, the manager spoke yesterday, said that he expects to be busy this week. He expects to have more incomings and outgoings, but there will be outgoings, and he seemed to hint that the people who be leaving weren't involved yesterday. But, you know, you're talking about Robbie Matondo, for instance, you know, probably his best ever performance in a Rangers jersey, but there's also a lot of speculation that he might be on his way. I think Blackburn talk this week, Leeds as well. So, you know, as much as he was terrific yesterday, and, you know, he deserves all sort of the plaudits he got for yesterday's performance, but I don't think the Rangers support could have any sort of great confidence that he would then back that up with a similar level of performance next week. The story of his Rangers career is just, you know, inconsistency. And, you know, I think back to perhaps, you know, he scores that great goal against Celtic in the 3-each game at Ibrox next week last season, and then the next week against Ross County. I think back, I don't think he started, but he comes off the bench and doesn't really do anything in a game that Rangers had to win that week. So, I think there's still a large portion of Rangers support would be quite happy to see Robbie Matondo leave if they could sort of recoup was it 1.8 I think they spent on him when they brought him in 2022. So, I mean, it's, you know, it was an encouraging result on Saturday, but I don't think it's still far too early to think that this is the sign of a Rangers team that's ready to mount a serious challenge. They'll be there or thereabouts, but I still think Celtic will, on current form, will be big favourites to go on and win the title this year.
As you mentioned, Andy, Robbie Matondo, a double yesterday. His performance has generated a big response on Record Sports social media channels. James Cooper saying, with Matondo's pace, why is he being sold? It doesn't make sense. Hugh DL saying as well, no sale of Dessers or Matondo or I will be very upset. Great performances yesterday across the park. Finally signs we are coming together. But as you say, Andy, it was all well and good yesterday, with all due respect, against Ross County, but it's just so stop-start, particularly from Matondo. No idea if he's a good player.
No, I mean, I've written my match report for tomorrow's paper. There's just a sense from Matondo. He's almost too quick for his own good. He's obviously rapid, he's lightning, but so many times he almost he's running away and he forgets to take the ball with him, or...
That's true, though. You've actually hit the nail on the head.
So, I mean, listen, his pace is a tremendous attribute to him, but technically, is he really up to the mark? Is he up to the flag level? I'm not sure he is, and I don't think there's been much evidence down his Rangers career to suggest that that would back up any suggestions that he's somebody who can take Rangers on and help them mount a title challenge. I mean, at the end of the day, he's in the team right now because he's the last man standing. Oscar Cortez is injured. If he'd been fit, he'd have been starting yesterday. If they'd had the money for Abdallah Sima, they'd have had him back, and Matondo wouldn't be anywhere near the starting lineup. So, no, I mean, from what we understand, Matondo seems to have been quite a significant wage bill as well, obviously coming from Germany, having played for Manchester City before, commanded a couple of big transfer fees. So no, I mean, I can't see him being a major figure in Rangers' future. I really think if a bid comes in this week for him, if Blackburn pony up the kind of numbers that Rangers would be looking for, I think they would be quite keen to get him off the wage bill and reinvest that money elsewhere.
Rangers Easy OK, watching live on YouTube, has written in saying, do think next Sunday will come a bit too soon for us, but a few incomings this week and we aren't as bad as we're being made out. Yefte, Barron, Proper, Diomande, Czerny, all look good finds by the manager. To be fair, the ones he's listed there, they do look like decent players.
Yeah, decent, but I mean, what Rangers really need is guys that are going to take them closer to Celtic. These guys are doing a decent job, and like Saban, I think he's been terrific since he's come in. Diomande, I think with the right kind of players round about him, he could be a special player for this team, but they're still 3, 4, 5 players short of being in a position where you could be confident about them putting in a kind of realistic title challenge. Obviously, as we say, it can be done this week. Rangers are in a bit of a different situation in Celtic in the sense that they've had to leave it this late because finances have dictated that. Celtic have basically chosen to leave it this late, which will raise its own questions. Rangers are now, sitting in this, Luke Clement is basically sitting here waiting for the phone to ring, hoping that somebody's going to come up with some money for Todd Cantwell or Jans Hadji or Ben Davies, get their wages off the balance sheet, and so that he can then start to reinvest it elsewhere. So, it's a different waiting game that Clement is playing to Brendan Rodgers, but who do you think would be in a happier position? I still think Brendan Rodgers would be far more secure how his team's looking than the Rangers manager is.
I had actually sympathy yesterday, Andy, with Philip Clement over one issue, because it's been one of the other things that people have been writing in about is that after the game he was asked, can Rangers beat Celtic? And a lot of people have written in off the back of that. Gordon Andrews here on Facebook saying, wish Clement hadn't said that, should keep it shut and just turn up on the day, don't give the opposition chance to have a go. But Alan Brooks, I kind of agree with this thinking. Alan Brooks says, I'm not a Rangers fan, but what was he supposed to say when asked the question? Any manager would say, yes, we can win. I mean, what is the Rangers manager meant to say? Even when the chips are down, even when they've had a really torrid start to the season, can he say, nah, do you know what? We're going to get thumped next week. I mean, that would just be career suicide.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be much of a journalist if I was telling managers to keep stum in press conferences. So we quite like they express opinions. So, he's got to go there with a level of, confidence, a level of belief that they can get a job. And listen, would it be out of the realms of possibility for Rangers to go to Celtic Park and get a result? Absolutely not. But they have to perform almost, inch perfectly. And, there's still, I think, question marks over members of the team, whether or not they're capable of going there under the pressure that they will face at Parkhead and be able to put in the kind of performance levels required. I mean, you're thinking about James Tavernier. I mean, he was decent yesterday, but I think we would all agree that he's not been at his best this season so far. I mean, obviously, 31, 32 now, I think, Tavernier. I mean, are we starting to see the start of his decline, or is he already on the decline? Obviously, every player goes through, but once they reach a certain age, I'm trying to think elsewhere. I mean, obviously, there's question marks for centre back. Robin Proper missed the game at the weekend. Leon Balogun came off with a bang to the neck. Come said they expect Proper to be back. He went as far as saying he was 200% sure he'd be back, but again, with Rangers and injury front, are we ever quite certain on that side of things? Probably not. And then, looking further up the pitch again, if it's Matondo to go with, that great goal he scored at Ibrox last year, but, in terms of highlights against Celtic, he doesn't have many. And then Dessers, I mean, I've written my match report for tomorrow's paper on Cyril Dessers, and he's such an enigma, isn't he? I mean, because, his first touch yesterday, he basically goes to trap a ball that's coming out of the sky, and he trapped it as far as almost the touchline. He almost put it at the park with his first touch. But then you see him go on, and it's the type of moment that where I sit at Ibrox usually in the press box. There's a chap behind me that usually loses a plot every time Cyril Dessers does anything wrong. It was one of those moments that made me think of this individual that sits in the main stand at Ibrox. I just thought, this is what Cyril Dessers does to the sport at times. He drives them berserk, but then you see the way he takes his goal. I mean, just so smooth. One touch, bang, finish. The second goal, I've seen him miss that chance numerous times as we cut back across the 6-yard box. He'd stick it over the bar, but, again, clinical, puts it away. I actually think this season, there's 4 or 5 games I've seen him play this year. It's been his best run of form. Not just goals, just general his hold-up plays. But he looks tidier. He looks more confident himself. Looks more assured in himself. But the thing I like about Dessers is that when he does make a mistake, it really doesn't faze him at all. He just comes back and goes again. He also had a wee sort of flap at the fans at that Dynamo Kiev game. And I think he's said them. That was him trying to say, listen, I don't deserve the level of abuse I get, because I think generally his performance levels have risen this season. But in saying all that, would it surprise me at all if he was to go to Parkhead next week and, miss a sitter or have a really sort of big mistake that has a decisive impact on the game? Not at all. That's just the nature of him. I think Rangers fans just need to accept that he's a guy that on a good day will score you a goal, and on a bad day will miss a horrible, ugly chance that will prove costly. And unfortunately, that's where Rangers are at this moment in time in terms of the level of front men that they're able to attract. Danilo's similar to some extent. I think he's tidy on the ball outside the box at times, but I think we saw last week against St Johnstone. It's hard not to be too critical of him, given he's coming back from a long injury layoff. But we saw even last year when he was fit that he's capable of missing big chances that you would normally expect him to score. So that's where Rangers are at. The level of finance they're able to play, the stage of that and the rebuild, they're only going to get guys that are reliable to a certain extent. So I think that's where the question marks lie next week. Can Rangers get, they're going to need 7, 8, 9, probably 10 players all playing an 8 out of 10 at the very least to have any chance. If it's any less than that, then you expect Celtic just to sort of run over the top of them, as they have done a lot at Parkhead. I think Rangers have won twice in the last 15 visits, so the form book doesn't sort of
doesn't back
No, doesn't offer much hope from next week.
This quite a controversial comment in the comment section below on YouTube. Really worried about Tavernier against Mai the next week, to the point where if we get a midfielder in this week, I consider putting Sterling at right back. It'd be a big call drop in the captain. I mean, I can't see that happening, but I do think it speaks to the kind of malaise that James Tavernier feels or seems to be in at the moment. And just to round off on Rangers, Andy, I know a lot's been said about if they need to get players out before they sign anyone. What's your kind of gut feeling on that, your instinct? Do you think it will be a busy week in terms of incomes for Rangers?
I think, yeah, I mean, I really can't. I think the level of finance that are committed to with some of these big names or big high earners that aren't playing, your Cantwells, your Ben Davies, your Yanis Hadjis. I mean, these guys are all earning significant sums, and even Ben Davies, who's still obviously part of the first team, he's in and out of the team. They're coming from Liverpool. He's on a pretty significant wage. So I think it's imperative that Rangers get these guys off the wage bill. I don't think they're in a position where they can carry on with these guys and then add on additional players on top of them. I think that would, I've already seen that the wage bill last year was bigger than Celtics, and in terms of value for money, they're just getting nowhere near what's required. So, no, I think it largely depends on getting shot at these guys. Now, obviously, they can be inventive in how they get rid of it. Are they selling them? Are they putting them out on loan? To what? Are they committing some cash themselves to their wages in order to get them out the door? We don't know. That might be something they have to look at. But I think, Philippe Clement's hands will be tied until he can get these guys off. It might happen to be that he's left to look at loans himself, because maybe they don't get the transfer fees in that allow him to reinvest elsewhere. But as Michael was saying earlier on about Celtic, I mean, at this stage in the window, you're not getting bargains. You're probably, in terms of if you're wanting guys that have a good standard, you're going to have to pay over the odds, and because everyone's looking. It's a seller's market, as they say. So, yeah, I think Rangers, the week depends on them getting shot of some deadwood and some fringe men and some guys that don't want to be here anymore.
Before we round up, Andy, before we sign off today's Hotline Live, I should say that we are broadcasting whilst there's two Premiership games going on. Aberdeen against Kilmarnock and Motherwell against Hearts. And Aberdeen are 2-0 up as we speak, going into the last 15 minutes. And Motherwell are 2-1 up against Hearts at Fir Park. I mean, obviously we can't say too much on it, Andy, having not seen it, but if that stays the same way, a really damaging defeat for Hearts, and the Jimmy Teelan Express just rolls on at Pittodrie.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a strange one. I mean, in terms of Hearts, I mean, used to be that they were so smooth last year. They just seem to be so consistent.
And it looks like the recruitment went really well in the summer. It felt that way. They looked strong on paper.
It looked like a club that was sort of aligns the word they use, the buzzword they use these days. It looked like they were a club that were certainly all pulling the same direction on and off the pitch. But I think there's always been a feeling, certainly if you speak to our columnist Ryan Stevenson, he says there's quite a lot of this over-reliance and Lawrence Shankland at times. And I think obviously there was spells last year where if it wasn't for his goals, they would have probably been a lot more trouble than they found themselves in at times. And he really kept them, as you say, that positivity, kept them on the right track. Obviously, it doesn't look like, from what I've seen so far, that he's able to sort of rediscover the form that he was in at times last year. So that over-reliance in him is maybe coming back to bite it. I think certainly Steve Owen, whenever I was speaking to him, he was insistent that the club had to get another goal scorer and somebody that would just be able to take the burden off of Lawrence Shankland's shoulders and alleviate some of that pressure on him, because he does. It must be tough for him. Obviously, he's the captain, but it just seemed at times when things aren't going great for him, everyone just turns and looks to him to be the guy dragging him across the line. That can only go on for so long. So, again, yeah, that's perhaps something that Stephen Naismith will have to address in the final week before the window. Again, finding goal scorers at this stage of the summer is fairly. It's not an easy task. Certainly not when you're operating the sort of budget limits that Hearts will have. And then for Aberdeen, I think Dave Cormack, as a chairman, has taken plenty of stick, and rightly so, down his short spell as Aberdeen chairman. A couple of pretty honking managerial picks. If you think about Stephen Glass and the Barry Robson experiment, kind of fell flat as well. And then I don't know how you would describe the Neil Warnock situation, but
honking was a good word. I like that. I think that summed it up.
But it looks like he's so far, and it's obviously early days, and so we have to caveat it with that. But the appointment of Jimmy Thielen looks like it's been pretty savvy. So I think that's really good for Scottish football. I think we need a strong Aberdeen. We need a strong Hearts. Obviously, Hibs this season hasn't been a great start for them, but I think we need our big clubs performing well. I think we need our big clubs to be in Europe and competing and using their whatever financial might, the crowds, bigger crowd sizes that they have to get us back into European group stages. I mean, it's been great seeing Kelly and somebody lives in Paisley. It's been great to see St Mirren in Europe this season, but I think if we're serious about getting the coefficient back up as it was for the last couple of years, get back up to those kind of levels, we need our bigger clubs pulling their weight in Europe, and so I think having Aberdeen back in their eyes can only be a good thing for the country.
I should say, for anyone watching, it still remains Aberdeen 2, Kilmarnock 0, Gay with both goals there, and it's Motherwell 2, Hearts 1, Paul McGinn, Stephen O'Donnell with the goals for Well, and Yaturu Oda with the goal for Hearts. Andy, I think that brings us to the end of today's Hotline Live. I should say that we'll have all of the fallout from those 2 Premiership games on dailyrecord.co.uk/sport, and in a massive final week of the transfer window, we will be back with the Hotline Live starting at 6 p.m. tomorrow night. Andy, thank you very much for your time.
Cheers, Dan. I think that's Mick just flown past my window there.
I'm stunned he's not been answering. No, Andy, thank you very much, and thanks to you watching at home. Cheers.